But the reason we did it is because we didn't have the money to market. We didn't have the ability to launch on our own 2 feet. So we had to use these partnerships as a way to raise some capital from them that allowed us to continue to iterate our technology, our platform, and then launch these services. And then finally in 1990 kind of launch our own. But even that, as I tell in the book, it wasn't our plan to launch America Online. We were happy with these private label kind of services. It's Apple pulled the plug on us and decided they didn't want us to use the Apple brand name anymore. There was conflict about how we wanted to give away software for free. They wanted to sell it through Apple stores, things like that.
It was only through sheer force of will that you got Apple to actually give you their business. I mean, I should tell the story in the book. Apple didn't want to have this online service, and you basically weaseled your way in through the customer support department. Right. By just haranguing them over and over again, like, hey, dude, this will lower customer support.
Yeah, no, I was looking for some. We knew a partnership, it was probably 1987, 1988. We knew a partnership with Apple would be a big deal. They're a pretty important company at the time. It just launched Macintosh. And so I actually moved to San Francisco for 6 months, got an apartment here, and every day showed up at the Apple headquarters trying to figure out somebody I could talk to convince them to do something.
And you're like a 30-something-year-old at this time, right?
Even probably less than that. But yeah, maybe 28, 29, something like that. And so finally, the customer service department, we convinced that if they created an Apple-branded service, it would be a more efficient way for them to support their customers by getting people online to answer their questions from each other and not just call their telephone number and have customer service people on the phones. And we also said if we're going to create that, we can create a broader set of services that would help differentiate Apple. And maybe there's a reason people buy Apple, not IBM, because of this Apple Inc. Personal Edition service. But the core was finding a group, in that case, the customer service group, that really saw a benefit of doing something in the online world. It seems crazy now because even the reinvention of Apple in the last decade and the iPhone and the App Store and all that has really basically been around the internet, been around software, been around apps. But in those early days, in the late 1980s, most PC manufacturers, including Apple, viewed the online service world that we now think as the internet world as sort of something that was niche-y and more for computer hobbyists that wasn't going to be important, which is why it took us, I think it was 4 years to finally convince IBM to build a modem into a PC.
Hey everybody, I want to talk about one of my favorite addictions, Audible. I listen to audiobooks constantly because I love nonfiction, I love learning, and I'm big into bios, so my Audible pick for this month, this week, whatever amount of time it's going to take you to listen to it, I think you can listen to it in about a week, is The Man Who Knew Infinity, A Life of the Genius Ramanujan. And this book is amazing. It is about an Indian clerk who is a math genius and who filled 3 or 4 books with math theories and formulas that today inform how we interpret black holes, and a true genius who then went to England to study. And it is being made into a film, which I was lucky enough to just see. And it's got Jeremy Irons and Dave Patel in it. It is an amazing, and Stephen Fry, and just an all-star cast. And I just saw this movie, and it is very powerful and a great, great film. And, making math, interesting, very hard to do. And there's a lot of these people who did seminal, incredible work, and you would never know them. The book is by Robert Kangle, and I actually saw the author speak with the director recently at a screening. And I, immediately when I got invited to the screening, I said to myself, I'm going to go to screening for this book, but I want to go deeper. I always want to know not just the 90-minute or 120-minute version, but I like to read the original source material, and I like to listen to it. I'm constantly in the car. I'm driving between things. Sometimes I got to take my daughter to a kid's party, and then there's other parents there. I don't want to talk to them, so I pretend I'm on a conference call. Really, I'm listening to an Audible book while the kids are playing. The kids don't want to be involved with the parents, but the parents don't want to talk to me about some crazy nonsense. I just say, I got to go make a phone call. I secretly listen to a little bit of Audible. So go check out The Man Who Knew Infinity. It is an amazing audiobook, and it is going to get my highest recommendation. Of course, if you're not into bios, there are a ton of other interesting books. One I'm reading on my hikes through the NorCal mountains is Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman, who is I believe a New York university media kind of Marshall McLuhan type professor. And Amusing Ourselves to Death is my backup here. If you want to listen to an amazing book from 1985 about media and media theory and television versus the printed word in newspapers and before that books, and how illiterate and how television has become a huge nonsensical mess. We are actually amusing ourselves to death. If you look at what's happening in this election this year, this is a really interesting book to go back and listen to, especially. And the way I wound up wanting to listening to Amusing Ourselves to Death was I had Keith Raboy at the Launch Festival. You may have heard that episode here. And he just mentioned casually, like when I was asking him about Donald Trump and Cruz and Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, he said, yeah, it reminds me of this incredible book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't read that. And this is one of the things I love about audiobooks is, sometimes you get older, you're 30 years old, you're 40 years old, you're 50 years old. You're supposed to have read some books. You're supposed to be an expert. Listen, I'm supposed to be an expert on media and technology. I never read Amusing Ourselves to Death. I may have read a chapter or two when I was younger on the book. And now I have Audible. I listen to it on my hikes. I go for a 2-hour hike. I knock out 2 out of the 7 hours. Boom, I got another hike, wipe out another 2 or 3 hours, go to the gym. I reward myself when I exercise with Audible. I reward myself when I'm driving with Audible. I like to make myself smarter. Thank you so much to our friends at Audible for supporting this episode. Get a free audiobook right now, like The Man Who Knew Infinity or Amusing Ourselves to Death. And you can just go to audible.com/twist, audible.com/twist. Some of my past recommendations, The Hobbit, read by Robert Inglis, is amazing. My daughter and I love listening to that. We've listened to the first 3 chapters over and over again because she likes certain scenes, like when the dwarfs are singing and breaking plates. And then before that, I did Building Great Sentences because you guys know I sold my book and it will be on Audible at some point next year. And I wanted to write better sentences, so I got this Building Great Sentences, and it's really helped me do better sentences in my writing. And you can access your stuff from iPhones, iPad, Android, Windows, all that. What's really interesting is I have an iPad, I have my phone, and a lot of times I'll go from my iPad to my phone and it remembers where I was. So if you forget and my phone died on the hike, then I plugged in my iPad and I was listening on my deck, it remembered where I was and it caught me up when I was listening to Amusing Ourselves to Death. 180,000 titles in every genre, and they're doing some really interesting stuff with channels and podcasting. There's a bunch of stuff going on with Audible that you'll read about in the news. They're just an amazing company. I love it. Download my book of the week for free by signing up at audible.com/twist. You can only get that free book by going to audible.com/twist, and they love to see you do that. So make sure you tell your mom, your dad, your cousin, your brother, your sons, your daughters, your friends, your enemies. Tell them to go to audible.com/twist and get a free book. The Man Who Knew Infinity, a great, great listen. And Amusing Ourselves to Death, another great listen. Okay, let's get back to this amazing interview.